Strictly speaking, a serial murderer is someone who murders at least two individuals in separate incidents that occur at different periods. While the term serial murder is not defined by any legal rule, the crimes of serial killers have frequently captured the attention of the media and the public, particularly in cases involving multiple victims or grisly murderers. Following is a list of some of the most notorious serial killers in human history. Hello everyone, and welcome to another video. Today we'll be looking at the weirdest criminals of all time. Yeah, you heard it right. Jack the Ripper. We refer to the perpetrator of one of the oldest and most infamous murder sprees as Jack the Ripper, yet we do not know who he was. In 1888, the killer emerged from the Whitechapel neighborhood of London and murdered and dismembered 5 prostitutes. The police theorized that the murderer was a surgeon, a butcher, or a competent user of a scalpel. The murderer sent letters to the community and police detailing the crimes. Although numerous suspicions have been identified throughout the years, the actual perpetrator has never been identified. Jeffrey Dahmer. Jeffrey Dahmer began killing in 1978 at the age of 18 and was not arrested for murder until 1991 after a would-be victim fled and led police back to Dahmer's house in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Photos of dismembered bodies and body parts strewn throughout the apartment reveal some of the terrible aspects of his life as a serial killer. Even a vat of acid was at his disposal to dispose of victims. In total, Dahmer murdered 17 victims, most of whom were young men of color. In 1994, he was murdered by a fellow inmate after serving time in prison twice, first for molesting and then for murder. Harold Shipman. Harold Shipman, widely known as Dr. Death, is thought to have murdered at least 218 patients, with the number likely being closer to 250. This physician practiced in London between 1972 and 1998, committing murders while working in 2 separate offices. He wasn't apprehended until several people raised red flags, including an undertaker who was shocked by a large number of cremation certificates that Shipman was involved with, as well as the fact that the majority of the victims were elderly women who died in bed during the day rather than at night. The inquiry was bungled by the police, and Shipman continued killing until he became greedy and attempted to forge a will for a victim that named him beneficiary, which prompted the daughter of the victim to become suspicious. In 2000, he was finally convicted, and in 2004, he committed suicide in prison. John Wayne Gacy. John Wayne Gacy, a suburban construction worker, noted for his lively personality, participated in politics, and even performed as a clown at birthday celebrations. He was not a fool. In 1978, Gacy was suspected of the disappearance of a 15-year-old kid who was last seen with him. Families of missing boys had pointed fingers at Gacy before, but this was the first time officials took them seriously. Soon later, a search warrant enabled police entry to the Gacy residence, where the stench of roughly 30 victims buried in a 4-foot crawl space beneath the residence was detectable. In 1994, he was executed by lethal injection after being found guilty of 33 charges of murder, as well as rape and torture. H.H. Holmes. Chicago has seen its fair share of murderers, but probably none eerier than H.H. Holmes, the chemist who transformed a hotel into a torture castle. Before the 1893 World's Fair, Holmes relocated to Chicago and began outfitting a 3-story hotel with all manner of sinister devices, including gas lines, secret passages, and trapdoors, hallways to dead ends, chutes to the basement, soundproof padding, and torture devices strewn throughout the maze. Typically on his surgical tables, the gas allowed Holmes to knock out his guests before the worst of what was to come. The victims were then incinerated in the building's furnace, and he sold skeletons to medical institutions and perpetrated life insurance fraud. Before he was hung in 1896, he confessed to more than 30 killings, which were only discovered after a fellow con artist reported him for failing to meet a financial obligation. Pedro Lopez, one of the most prolific serial killers in the world, may still be at large. More than 300 deaths have been linked to Pedro Lopez in his home, Colombia, as well as in Ecuador and Peru. At least 1/3 of the victims were female tribal members. After Lopez's 1980 arrest, authorities discovered the graves of almost 50 of his teenage victims. Later, he was found guilty of killing 110 girls in Ecuador and confessed to an additional 240 murders in Colombia and Peru. The monster of the Andes did not even serve 20 years in prison, as he was released for good conduct in 1998. After more than 2 decades, his whereabouts are still unknown. Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy adored the limelight that his killings brought him, and many Americans were more than willing to give it to him. The western United States was his hunting zone, with an untold number of murders, mostly of college-age women, accumulating from Washington and Oregon to Utah and Colorado. Bundy was arrested and convicted of abduction in Colorado, but he escaped custody and moved to Florida, where he committed additional murders. The nation was captivated by Bundy's ultimate arrest and its aftermath, as the alleged killer functioned as his own attorney throughout what is thought to be the first broadcast murder trial, encouraged interviews, and boasted of the admirers that he'd built. In 1989, he was executed using the electric chair. So that's all from today's video. If you enjoyed it, remember to leave a like, subscribe, and ring that bell icon so that you don't miss our upcoming videos. And don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments section below. Stay tuned, and we'll catch you in the next video.